Today's guest is Jamil Damji, wholesaling expert, co-founder of KeyGlee, and a familiar face on A&E's triple-digit flip. I'm Kathy Fetke, and welcome to The Realwealth Show.
You're listening to The Realwealth Show with Kathy Fetke, the real estate investor's resource.
Jamil will break down how he got started in wholesaling, how he lost all his money through shiny object syndrome, and how he rebounded to create a multi-million-dollar business today. We'll also hear about his vision for a National Wholesalers Association and why it matters a lot right now. Also, as a thank you to our listeners, we're giving away a couple of chapters of my book, Retire Rich with Rentals. Just visit realwealth.com/retire rich to download. Jamil, I cannot believe I don't know if this is the first time. Is this the first time you've been on the Realwealth Show?
It's the first time I've ever been on your podcast before. And I have to say, Kathy, you and I are dear friends. And so I've just been waiting with bated breath for the invitation to be on the show. And I knew I had to up my game. I knew I needed to earn my spot here. And so when I got that text from Kaylin and she was like, it appears as if you are accomplished and ready to be on the Realwealth Show. Would you like to be on it? And I was like, Kaylin, I've been literally waiting for this invitation for 3 years. So I'm really happy to be here. I love you so much, Kathy. You're one of my heroes in real estate. I think you do such incredible things. You're of the highest sophistication in your investments. And I always feel like when I listen and watch you, I learn so much because you're truly, truly in it and you get it, So it's just it's a real pleasure and honor to be here with you today.
Oh my goodness, you're gonna make me cry. And I just had to see how many seasons of A&E you'd be on before I could have you here.
I think here's the thing. I think you probably wouldn't have had me on here if I had done another one.
Oh, okay.
Well, not because I wouldn't have wanted to, but because I think television mars the world of reality in a way that is just not interesting to me. There was so much that I loved about making a TV show. I loved Brad, the producer. I think he was great. Outside of him, in the world of production, it's a lot of lies. It's a lot of Hollywood BS, manipulation. And, I think the reason why TV is struggling in truth is I think that producers don't respect their audience. I think that they don't think their audience is smart. They don't think their audience is sophisticated. They wouldn't even let us talk about closing costs on our show because they thought that would be way too heavy and way out of the realm of people's understanding. And I can't tell you how many DMs I got from people saying, you're misleading, you're misrepresenting profits.
These aren't the real numbers.
These aren't the real numbers. How come you're not talking about what the agent's commissions are? And how come you're not talking about seller concessions? And why are you not talking about closing costs? How come none of this makes it into your math? And I would always say in response, please send this DM to A&E because we want to. We ask and we push for it. And they always give us this line of BS that, oh, yeah, shoot it twice. Let's do one version with the real numbers and then one version without them. And then when we watch the episode, the one with the real numbers never makes it. And so,
oh my goodness.
It's come on, guys. Let's be real. I think the reason why TV is suffering is because this disconnect between what the Hollywood elites think their audience is versus what their audience actually is. And I think that needs to change.
Ooh, I think you're the one to do it.
Yep.
Oh my goodness. Oh, so good. I've known enough A&E stars to know that they had to make up a lot of stuff, and that's unfortunate. I know I was up for some show. Producers came to my house and they wanted to do something that I just wasn't comfortable with and it just wasn't reality. And I told them the show I wanted to do that was reality, and they didn't call me back. So, but do you think there is an audience for what it really takes to do real estate successfully?
Yeah, and I don't think that they're on cable TV.
Got it. Okay.
I think the reality is, and this was something I did in front of our executive producer at a large event that we had sold out. And I asked straight up, because the TV people want you to think that they have something to do with your success, and it's not real. right? They didn't build my audience. They never helped me build an audience. I had an audience before. In fact, I think we helped A&E. I think we brought eyeballs to A&E, and when we left, they left. And so that's what I truly think is real, because when we're at an event with 3,000 people and I ask the audience, how many of you are here because you watch Triple Digit Flip, and 3 hands go up? And then I say, how many of you are here because you watch this on YouTube? And 997 hands go up. I'm like, oh. And then I look right at the producer and I said, interesting. And away we go. And so...
One thing is for sure, you can pack a room. You have the most loyal following. You invited me to one of your parties, and I forget which city. And I had the VIP pass, and I showed up feeling very VIP. I was a co-host with you, and I couldn't get in. They didn't let me in. And Devon couldn't get in. NFL football player. It was so funny. There were lines out the door. So crazy. People love you. Yeah. So let's talk about why, but you're a huge success today, but let's go back to the beginning, when you first started real estate. What got you into it?
It was an accidental start, right? I do believe in kismet, serendipity. There's paths that are kind of set in front of us based off of our, where we live, what our people are, what, personality types we have that might gravitate and create an interest in us. I didn't necessarily gravitate towards real estate out the gate. I'm an East Indian guy. I grew up in Canada. My parents, they raised me to be a doctor, right? I'm supposed to be a physician, straight up. In a family
you have 2 choices, right? Lawyer or physician.
That's doctor or attorney. In fact, my parents didn't have a high regard for attorneys, so I didn't even have the attorney.
That wasn't on the table.
When I said I wanted to be an attorney, because I'm a talker, right? I have the gift of gab. So like if they had pushed me to be an attorney, I think I would be a lawyer right now. I think I would be like Johnny Cochran-esque if I could have.
You'd be good.
I think I could do it. I think I could really do well in criminal defense. And so, they didn't allow that. They were like, it's got to be a doctor or you're just disowned, And so I worked and tried and really, really wanted to be a doctor. And, I didn't get in. I didn't make it. And I was devastated. I was like, I had a 4.0 near GPA. I crushed it on my medical school entrance exam, the MCATs. I just didn't make it. There were other people. My cousin, in fact, we have the same last name, Damji. I don't want to get into I'll say it. He copied off of me on the medical school entrance exam on the organic chemistry section. And we joked about it recently. And, how the fact that he got into medical school and I didn't. Right. And so this wasn't a matter of like, who was better prepared? Who was the smarter person? Who was deserving of being there? Not to say that he isn't deserving. He's a phenomenal physician, and God bless him because he really does care. The reason he wanted to be a doctor is because he had a real reason to be a doctor, and I didn't. I wanted to be a doctor because I wanted to have the money. That's the reality. I wanted to be rich. I wanted to have the status that my mom and dad wanted for me, and so that's why I wanted to be a doctor.
Wow. So not getting in, that must have been really devastating.
So it was really devastating for me, Kathy, because I tried so hard. I worked so hard. My whole family dynamic was counting on Jamil being the doctor, and then I don't get in. So the identity was gone. The future potential was gone. I'm like, it's doctor or nothing. And that means I'm going to be nothing. But after I got over the initial heartbreak of the rejection, I realized the mistake I made. I outsourced my future to someone else's decision, which no, I'm a human being. I get to decide. I decide what gets to happen to me. I decide what I get to do, not some guy in an office who has no idea who I am, how hard I worked, or how deserving I am, who maybe got into an argument with his spouse that morning and for whatever reason didn't like me. Maybe he was bullied by somebody named Jamil growing up. Maybe she dated a Jamil growing up. I don't know if it was a man or woman. That's why I'm going back and forth here. But whoever it was that rejected me didn't have a real reason for doing it. They just decided no. Maybe it was the universe. It was the universe. And so that was empowering for me because it gave me the objective understanding that this is all on you, dude. It's all you. So you're either going to make it or you're not, but at least you get to make the choice. So get out there and figure it out. And so I did. I find myself in entrepreneurship. A friend of mine at the time said, you know, Jamil, there's this company, they're struggling right now. They're in the world of media, new media. They're building these things called websites. And you know, their business is essentially going out to companies in the local Calgary, Alberta business environment and asking them if they would like to establish an online presence. And they're having a really hard time selling. And so you're a good salesperson. You want to try? So I did. I walked in there and it was so janky, Kathy. The call center was a small closet with a desk, a really, really cheap chair. My lead list was the Yellow Pages. And my phone was one of those Nokia free cell phones that you get with one of those plans. You get like, you know, you get those. Remember back in the day, you get the little Nokia phone. That was it. That was my call center. That's what I had to work off of. I made more sales in 1 week than they made in a quarter.
Wow.
So I saw that I had leverage. I'll get to how I got into real estate here in a moment because this is the door in. So I do really well. I tell them, hey, I will enter this thing, but I don't want to do this for commission. I want ownership in your company.
Woo.
If you guys are
Bold.
failing, you need me. I did more sales in a week than you did in a quarter. So I want 51%.
51, not even 40. No, okay.
I'm
Okay, I'm going to try this negotiation tactic.
And they gave it to me.
Oh my goodness.
So hear this, the great negotiator I am. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go to town on this, and I start selling the hell out of these websites. But I didn't know anything about the business, and so I'm selling these 6-page websites for $600 a pop, right? Thinking that we're making money doing this, but we come to find out after we do all the math that it actually costs us $700 to build one of these $600 websites that I'm selling. So I effectively sold us out of business.
Okay.
Very fast.
Wow. 51% of nothing.
Exactly. 51% of Jack S. So here I am, you know, in this like now debt situation where I've created a hole in my life because of how good I was, or I thought I was at selling. But it put me in proximity to a gentleman who was building luxury duplexes with his dad. And they were making like $160,000 every time they would do one of these deals. And I'm listening to them celebrate a closing. And 160 grand in a life like I was living at that time, you could have been like $100 million, right? Yeah. Like it was unreal money to money. Yeah, to me. I just didn't understand that kind of money. But I was attracted to it. And so I asked how I could get involved. And they just said, no, you can't be involved. You have no credit. You have no real estate license. You can't build. You're not a contractor. I mean, we have no use for you.
You didn't get 51%, huh?
I did not. But
no. Okay.
I continued eavesdropping on their conversation. And they started complaining that they couldn't find enough 50 by 120 foot lots to develop on. And so I saw the need. And I asked them if I could help them find some of those building lots. And they said, absolutely. If you can find one of these for us, we'll buy it for sure. So the next day I'm walking my dog. And I happen to live in a neighborhood where this development is happening. It's in an inner city neighborhood. It's in fact the neighborhood that I'm living in currently in Canada. I bought a home in that same neighborhood, a new construction home. I live right on the river here. It's a beautiful place. Such a cool thing. But at the time, I was renting. And this house I had tried to rent, but it was like $300 out of my budget, was still for rent after 3 months. So I called, walking my dog, I called the lady and I asked if she'd sell instead of renting because she's been unsuccessful. And she said, sure. And I asked, how much would you want for the property? $350,000 was her answer. And so now I have a sale number, right? I'm like, okay, I can buy this for $350,000. And I think this was like one of those God moments, honestly, because how I asked the next question really changed the entirety of my life, because most people would have gone back to the office and said to their friend, hey, I can buy this for $350,000 and then let them kind of figure out how you were going to be taken care of in it.
Yeah.
And that's what 99.9% of people would do. But I didn't get that download. What I was instructed internally to do was to go to my friend and say, how much would you pay for this house? And his answer was $400,000.
Oh, wow.
And so now I have a $50,000 problem to solve, right? Because I don't have 350 grand. But if I did, I could buy this and sell this for 400 and I'd make $50,000. So how do I do it? And there lies the journey of how I became a wholesaler, because I didn't know how to put the dots together. I couldn't connect them. So I did what I knew how to do, which was call people out of the phone book. So the same thing that I was doing as a job, selling websites, I did for myself. But instead, I started calling real estate attorneys. And I got all the way to the letter S, a gentleman by the name of David Steed. He answered his own phone. He was so fresh out of law school that he had no secretary. And he answered his own phone, and he's talking to me, and I'm explaining what's going on. He's the first guy I got to talk to. Kathy, I got all the way to the letter S before I was even able to talk to somebody that wasn't like railroading me off the phone. And he says to me, oh my God, this is the easiest thing. What you're trying to do is called a skip transfer. And so I'm like, okay, tell me more.
Okay, yes. What is
and
that?
He says you're going to need two contracts, one where you're the buyer, one where you're the seller. Now, the important thing to do is where you are the buyer, you have to write your name and or nominee. Then on this other contract, you're going to put your name in the seller line, and then who your end buyer is going to be on the buyer line, and everything has to line up. I'm the attorney on both. The only thing that's going to be different is the price. The closing day has to be the same. All of the terms need to be the same other than the price. Once you have those two things filled out, email them back to me. And in a couple of weeks, if everything works out and I can, clear the title and there's no concerns, I'll have a check for you. And lo and behold, a couple of weeks later, there's a $47,000 and change cashier's check waiting for me at his office. And I was shocked. I mean, I didn't cash that check for over 3 months, Kathy.
What?
I folded it in my wallet, and it got to the place where the folds had become so worn, like the check was almost falling apart. And a friend of mine was like, dude, you got to cash that. They're only good for 6 months, and you're going to tear this thing. Like, stop looking at it. Go put it in the bank, dummy. And so I did, and I never looked back.
Wow. That is the best story. That's amazing. So fast forward to today, how many wholesale transactions would you say you've done?
Over 7,000.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and that's only in America. I did a couple hundred in Canada before I went broke. I went broke because I got into development. That's a whole other thing. And
but that's an important thing, though. Let's talk about that, because you and I have talked a lot about people like you and me who chase shiny objects. We find something that we're really good at and we can do. And then all of a sudden there's something else and we want to do that. And that's often how we get derailed. I know there's people listening right now who have done the same thing. So you went broke after you found this money machine.
Yeah. The money machine made me $12 million, Kathy.
Whoa.
Yeah. So think of that, right? We got to a place where my sister and I had $12 million. And, the world at our fingertips. But there's this, how I went broke, again, was, I think, like just a testimony to how immature I was at the time. And also a lesson I had to learn. So
I see it all the time. Sometimes people do need to be humbled. And I say that with love, because when you've seen it, people.
I lived it. I was a mess, and
when the ego runs the show, right?
Yeah. I mean, I was in my early 20s. I had $1 million worth of cars, right? I lived in this beautiful home that overlooked the city. I bought my mom a house on a lake. I had a very toxic, expensive girlfriend. It was all the stuff, right? But I'm sitting there. I went from single family to apartment buildings. I started wholesaling apartment buildings, or skip transferring apartment buildings. I didn't even know what wholesaling was. I didn't even know if there was a term for it at the time, because there was no Cody Sperber or Ron LeGrand or any of these, educators that became Carlton Sheets. Even was like a TV guy. I didn't even know who that was. And so none of this existed, and these terms were foreign to me. And they called it a skip transfer. So that's what I thought I was doing, was just, the king of the skip transfer. How sexy is that? I'm wholesaling or skip transferring apartment buildings. And there's this man who's buying them all for me. And I'm making $100,000 a pop every building, by the way.
Wow.
And I'm really good at finding them because a lot of these apartment buildings were being self-managed, especially in that like unit count that the developer wanted to buy. He didn't want to buy the big buildings that like Boardwalk would want. He wanted to buy those smaller buildings that were easy for him to turn into condos. And so he was doing condominium conversions. And so the parking ratio needed to be 50%. There were certain aspects that really only fit smaller buildings. And a lot of these smaller buildings are self-managed. And so I would drive around town looking for the for rent signs that were like handwritten, and I knew that this was a self-managed building, and I would call and talk to the person that owned it, and I would do deals. And so I have this apartment building that I'm flipping to this guy, and he's this like supposedly super rich guy coming from Monterey, California, and he's wants to beat me because I've sold him so many deals now, and he wants to know who this guy is. Like, who's this person that's been really helping him scale his entire show. And so I'm, game to me, and I'm standing there, and this Rolls Royce Phantom pulls up. And I'm a car guy, right? At the time, I'm a supercar guy. So I'm like, wow. And then the door opens, and this woman walks out of the passenger side of the car. And I was like, wow, like, and then I'm like waiting for Brad Pitt to come out, right? And it's basically like a small version of Mr. Bean. I'm not kidding you. The most homely looking, bald, fat, weird looking guy comes like, shimmying out of this Rolls Royce Phantom, and he's like, hello. And I'm like, oh, I think I just found out how life works. I got it. I think I got it. Okay. And so I finished that meeting. I say to my sister, we're doing it wrong. We're doing this wrong. We got to be him. We have to be him. That's how you get that. You do what he's doing. Why does he want to meet me? Why is he so willing to pay us $100,000 for every one of these things? Because we're the dumb ones.
Because he's making more. Yeah.
Yeah, we're the dumb ones. So we got to do what he's doing. And my sister, of course, she's like, of course, let's do what he's doing. So the next 4 buildings I tie up, we close. We've got cash. So I'm taking all that cash and I'm putting them as down payments to buy these things. I don't have good credit. So my parents co-sign on all of the construction loans. So they got my mom and dad, my sister, myself, all securitizing these loans. This is 2000 and end of 2006. And so the writing is on the wall. We end up losing all of them. All of the money that we had put down in down payments gone. And we had to start over.
The whole family.
The whole family. And the saddest part about it, Kathy, is that I lost my family's home.
Oh my goodness.
I made mom and dad lose our childhood home because the banks took it. And so we ended up, an entire family, mom, dad, sister, niece, cat, dog, and me, in a 2-bed, 1-bath apartment, going from $1 million worth of cars, a house overlooking the town, my mom living on a lake, and all of a sudden we're in this like dusty 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment. But the most beautiful thing about it was no one blamed me.
That's amazing.
Nobody said, you did this to us, you ruined our life. What my mom said was, at least we're together. And she's so like, I could cry thinking about it because she meant it. And at least we were together. And those were some of the sweetest days of my life, being again back with my mom and eating her food and laughing at like normal things and watching TV with my sister and raising my niece with her, and just getting to do that was beautiful and sad, but also amazing.
I totally know what you mean. I remember when we got taken down in 2008, and I was crying, and we'd lost everything. And I got myself up out of bed and I went on a hike, and I'm like, you know what? This is the same hike that I hiked when we had money. I don't have any money, but it's the same ground, it's the same trail, it's the same tree, same sky. And this is the thing that brings me the most joy. Then when I come home, I'm going to pick up my kids from school and we're going to do homework and play. And that also is the same thing I did and loved to do when I had money versus, and also didn't have money. So it is a really beautiful thing to get a reset like that, as hard as it is. But when you take it as a gift and learn what really matters in life, then we're not driven by the ego and by these things that really don't have as much meaning. So looking back at that situation, what would you have done differently?
Nothing.
Nothing. You would lose $12 million all over again for what?
So that I could be exactly where I am right now.
Ah, it's so beautiful. Okay, and where are you right now?
I'm in the happiest days of my life.
Oh, say more.
So, life doesn't happen without challenge and obstacles and pain. It's a reality and it grows us, right? And I can trace back all of the biggest triumphs of my life are a product of the lowest moments of my life.
Okay.
Everything good I've had came from the manure, right? And it's true fertilizer. And like our pain and our problems and the things that go wrong, they're meant to grow us. They're meant to purify us. They're meant to have us rise out of the flames like a phoenix. That's why we're in the fire. And we can sit there in the fire and be screaming that, we're burning. Or we can really look at it for what it is, which is a lesson and an opportunity. And I don't want to lose those opportunities. I don't want to be without them. I don't want to be without those lessons. I'm a better human for them. I'm a better man because of them. I'm a better boyfriend. I'm a better son. I'm a better teacher. I'm a better leader. I'm a better business owner because I've had that, and I can be more empathetic and more understanding. And also I understand that money isn't it, right? When you get to the place where you touch enough money and you've seen the things and you get the fame and you get the fortune and you get the house and you get the girl and you get the car and you get all the stuff, it's nothing. It's nothing.
Yeah.
It has to come back to you. And
those are some beautiful words. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, Real Wealth was built out of desperation, right? It wouldn't exist had we not gone through those things. And then I also went through, then it grew so quickly and my fame rose before my experience. I know that's happened to a lot of syndicators lately, but too much money was coming at me too fast. And I did some bad deals that I didn't understand back then that were not something I was an expert in. I've struggled. I put, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars into these failed projects. So, but everything you've just said, it's part of why I can do good projects now. It's why I take my time and I slow down and think about what matters most. And it's really created who I am. So I can't agree more with what you said. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you for asking.
All right. So coming back to real estate, which seems so superficial after all that, but I do just want to talk about you as a wholesaler, a famous one. Would you still choose wholesaling over, say buy and hold or flipping or any of the other things that people do to make money?
Yeah, I do. And why is because it reaches the first version of me. I had no pedigree. I had no money. I had no credit. I had nothing. And I got a little education from an attorney and I went and I did it. And I was able to make this beautiful life from this incredible strategy. And it's amazing. And I think it's a beautiful thing. But I have to say that I've made 7,000 homes more expensive in the process of doing this. And that's not lost on me. And the reality actually came full circle, came screaming at me. I was, again, walking my dog. I was in my neighborhood where I live in a $4 million home that I own outright, and I walk my luxury Labradoodles in the morning with this, incredible life I have. And I see this Ford Astro van parked around the corner from where I live. And I paid attention to it because Astro flipping, Astro van. I was like, how cool. I haven't seen one of those vans in a minute. But then I saw that there were people in that van. And then a man came out and he started straightening up a suit. And then I saw a woman in there with 2 kids. And I realized that they're living in this van. And so I walk up and I start talking to him. And of course, he was at first really standoffish and didn't want to talk to me because he thought I was there to ask them not to park there. But I asked him, what's gone on? What happened? How did you get here? And maybe I can help. And so he says they'd lived in the same house for 15 years. And one day he gets a knock at the door and somebody hands him a 30-day notice to vacate. And the guy said, I'm an investor. I'm really sorry to do this, but I just bought this house off of the person who owned it, your landlord, your old landlord. I have your security deposit. And unfortunately, it's not California, so we don't have to keep them in Arizona. You get a 30-day notice to vacate when you're month to month, and you got to go. And so that's what the investor did. They gave him a notice to vacate. And I've been a part of those deals thousands of times, Kathy, on the other side, where I'm the guy, sending somebody to knock on the door. I've done that. I've done that before. I've sold the deal to a guy who does that, right? And so I saw the product of it. And so I say to the man, can you tell me the address? And he does. And our company is the one that wholesaled it. And so God sends this man to my door to show me the effect of what we did. Not as punitive, but as a result. And so here is your work, Jamil. What's next? I made a pivot in my life. I've dedicated the last year and a half of my existence to affordable housing. And I've been involved in building and buying and renovating and converting homes into co-living, that we turn these into little micro communities. And we do good work, and we're helping people that are just in that spot that need us, that need to know about financial literacy. So we teach them. We have, monthly seminars in there where we don't charge anything. We just train. We train them on credit. We train them on job placement. We teach them about real estate. We teach them financial literacy. We teach them about credit. Like, we're giving them tools that are going to help them get out of a place where they got to pay by the week, so they can get into a place where they can own it. And we're doing that, and with intention, and we're doing it now at scale. And not only is it working, but I'm getting returns over 30% in the process. So you don't have to be a person who makes no money, having no returns, and not an investor to be ethical, to be sustainable, and to be helpful and compassionate. You don't need to reject money to do that. You can do both. You can be super, super efficient, super wealthy, and also make a massive impact. And so that's where I've been. I've been focusing on co-living, and I'm focused on really standardizing the ethics of wholesaling. Wholesaling has had a really hard rap in the last 5 years. And that's because wholesalers have done some terrible stuff out there. You learn off YouTube, and you don't have the right intention when you're getting involved. And then people start lying, and they start doing all this stuff, and their sellers are getting really hurt, and people are getting hurt. And so we also have an obligation to standardize and to elevate and to create a code of ethics that we all follow, so that we can self-police. And if we have bad actors, we got to chase those actors off the stage, because they don't deserve to be there.
Preach. I am so thrilled. I'm so thrilled to hear you speaking like this. And I know the powerful man that you are, and the visionary, and how you make things happen, and you make them happen in a huge way. So, Jamil, any way that I can support you in this mission, it has been a passion of mine too, is to help people, just to raise financial literacy, so that more people can enjoy the lifestyle that you and I have been so blessed with.
Thank you. And you do it. You absolutely do it. I've been watching you. I've been following you. And I'm a fan of yours. I think you're just like the smartest person. And you really are the perfect mix of heart and hustle. And so, like, you got both of this. You got the perfect combination of a woman who knows what she's doing and also gives a crap while doing it. And that's a rare thing. And I love that for you. And I love being friends with you as a result of who you are. And there is a way that you can help me. If there's anybody watching this right now that has wholesaled, is a wholesaler, or has contemplated wholesaling, friends of mine and I are putting together the National Association of Wholesalers, where we want to create a standardized organization where we can raise the standards of how wholesale is practiced. And so anyone listening to this podcast right now, if you have a desire to join or to participate, volunteer, It's a nonprofit. I am not going to make any money from this. It's only costing me money and time to do this. And all of us in the executive committee at the same, we will never make money from this. I'll put that in every piece of literature and media that are out there. I will always, always, always stay to that. No matter how big and profitable it could be, I will never, ever, ever, ever take a profit from it. This is for the people that want to wholesale, and it is to elevate the industry. And so if you have a desire to be involved, send me a DM and let's connect.
Love it. Jamil, I could talk to you for days, so let's please hang out. And thank you for being here on The Real Wealth Show. I hope to have you back.
Thank you, Kathy. I love you too.
Love you. Oh my goodness. I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I did. If you'd like to find out how to hold more real estate, you can download some free chapters at realwealth.com/retire rich. I'm Kathy Fedke. Thanks for joining me here on The Real Wealth Show. We'll see you next time.
Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are provided for informational purposes only and should not be construed as an offer to buy or sell any securities or to make or consider any investment or course of action. For more information, go to realwealthshow.com.